We told half of the story of Nadab and Abihu last week. We saw that they had observed the sacrifice of Aaron. They had seen the glory of God descend on the temple, or not the temple yet, the tabernacle. They saw the people's reaction, that they shouted with joy and fell on their faces. And Nadab and Abihu thought, we want that too. We want to do the same thing. So they did their own offering in their own way, a way that was not authorized by God, a way that was not prescribed by God. They did something that was for God, for themselves, and God said, this will not stand. This cannot be. And so they died. They were carried out by their own kin. And it was a very resoundingly clear message to the people of God, but also to the priests of God. You don't take these things lightly. The things of God are not things to be toyed around with. It's not just at your own pleasure, at your own will, however you might do it. But we are to follow God in the way that He has given us to follow Him. And it is a joyful matter. It is a way that leads to abundant life, but it is a serious matter. Our God is one to be feared. So, imagine you're Aaron in the story, and two of your sons have just died. And you were told not to mourn them, because what happened to them was right, according to what they had done. So you could mourn the fact that God had struck down two men in the tabernacle because of what an affront that is to God. But you should not mourn them and their death. You're Aaron in the story. What happens next? Well, that's the part we didn't read last week that we're going to read this week. What happens with Aaron and his other sons? Well, we're going to begin in verse 8. It says, the Lord spoke to Aaron, you and your sons are not to drink wine or beer when you enter the tent of meeting. Now, that word that's translated wine or beer is translated so that we will understand it. It just means don't drink any fermented drink. So that includes a lot of categories, but in our contemporary mindset, we know for sure that means wine or beer. So don't drink wine or beer. Don't drink any fermented drink when you enter the tent of meeting, or else you will die. This is a permanent statute throughout your generations. So we're going to stop there just for a minute, because drinking alcohol is a lightning rod issue, especially for Baptists. And in some ways it's because we've made a big deal out of it. In other ways it's because it is a big deal. Now, we know that generally speaking, drinking fermented drink is not forbidden. In fact, we have cases where people are told they should drink, whether it's to celebrate, whether it's part of a ceremony, or whether it's Paul to Timothy, hey, you got a stomach ache, take a little wine for your stomach. So we know that the drinking of alcohol is not forbidden completely. In fact, many Jewish ceremonies incorporate the drinking of wine as a part of the ceremony. And no, it wasn't as alcoholic then as it is today, because people have perfected putting as much alcohol in alcoholic beverages as possible. So it wasn't like that then, like it is today. But it was a beverage where if you drank it too much, you would be drunk. Which is why the thing that is forbidden is not drinking, but drunkenness. So in every case, drunkenness is forbidden. But in this case, the priests are told, do not even drink alcohol at all. And this is especially dramatic to the priests because of the central place of wine in many of their ceremonies. So if you told me not to drink, I'd be like, hey, that's easy, because I don't. And I don't like it. Like, I would much rather have a taste of West Columbia water than any alcoholic beverage. I just think it's gross. And so for me, you say, tell me not to drink, that's not a big deal at all. So that's super easy for me. But if you grew up in a culture where wine was a particular part of your culture, like an essential day-to-day, ceremony by ceremony. Wine is not just something that other people do. Wine is something that everybody does on a regular basis. If that's your family, that's your extended family, that's like your whole community, that's a part of it, and you're told, you cannot bring this in the tabernacle. That's different than telling me not to do it. And so that's why I want to be clear, because I know for some of you that is true. Like, alcohol has been a part of your life since you can remember. It's a part of your family. It's a part of your extended family. It's kind of a way you celebrate. It's incorporated into your celebrations. Some of you have terrible taste and you actually like to drink it. And I didn't mean that as an insult, just as a fact. Just like people that like ranch dressing. I don't know what's wrong with you. So it's a part of your culture. It's a part of your family, extended family. And so for someone to suggest that you shouldn't do it would be a pretty dramatic thing. That would be a revolutionary idea. That would be changing everything you've ever known. And so here we have God telling Aaron and all of the priests, do not do this in the holy place. Absolutely not. It's forbidden. Don't even think about it. And if you do, you'll die. Now that's pretty extreme. The penalty now for drinking alcohol in the tabernacle is death. The penalty is death. That's dramatic. And we're going to explore why that is in just a minute. But one reason that is implied in the text but is not explicit in the text, one reason that this is commanded is because Nadab and Abihu were probably drunk when they offered the offering that they offered. There's a reason the first command after don't mourn them is don't drink, because we see where drunkenness in the holy place has led. It's led to these sacrifices that were not prescribed by God. It's led to foolishness. It's led to destructive behavior. It's led to anti-God, hyper-individualized behavior in the holy place. And he says, don't do it anymore. If you do, you'll die. So God's like, I'm not going to wait and see what happens when you drink in the tabernacle anymore. I'm not going to wait to see that when you're drunk, you misuse the things of God. I'm not waiting for that anymore. If you drink alcohol at all in the tabernacle, you're done. Because what had happened previously is these two men had become drunk, and they had profaned God, and God was forced to take their life. So now the law becomes much more defined. Don't do it at all. So this is not the point of the message, but it is something that I can't just pass over and not mention out of fear of what you might think about me because of what I think about alcohol. And I know some people don't talk about it at all because they don't want to upset anybody. Other people talk about it in the extreme libertarian way, just do it, just pay attention to how you do it. And then there's others who talk about in the extreme way of don't do it at all, the teetotaling, absolutely not. So we have all of these extreme positions. I just want to introduce maybe a moderating position. And here's what I have to offer you. One, I will say again, the Bible does not forbid drinking alcohol. And so if you are able to drink it and not get drunk, then it is allowed. But I will add to that drinking alcohol leads to drunkenness. And I know that you think when you drink, you don't get drunk, but everybody else thinks differently. You know, the person who's drunk is not the most self-aware person. The one that's had a little bit too much doesn't know that they've had too much, and we know that because of the way that they'll go ahead and drive home. We know that because of the way they'll talk to people. We know that because of the way they act around people. And so alcohol on its own is not evil, but it quickly leads to evil. Quickly. More quickly than we would like to admit. So I do not lean heavily into the libertarian everything in moderation camp. I lean more into let's treat a substance that is volatile as a volatile substance. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to burn something in your backyard and you could never get fire to light, so you went and grabbed a can of gasoline. I don't know if any of you have ever been ignorant enough to do that, but I have. And it's not that long ago either. It wasn't even like in the ignorance of my youth, but it was very recently, within the last 5 years. And I put the gas on it, and I just thought, I'll just let it sit for a while, and then it'll be okay. I'll just come back to it later and light it. And unfortunately, that's like really bad to do, because then the vapors have a chance to like fill up the whole space. So I was several feet away. I thought I'm not even going to do a lighter, I'm going to strike a match and throw it. Well, I struck that match about 7 feet away from the gas, where I thought the gasoline was. It was with me. It was with me. And I'm surprised I have eyebrows. It was like an explosion. It was an explosion, which is why it works in an engine, combustion. That's what it's for, right? But I'm not the brightest bulb. And it exploded. Hey, it did burn. It did burn the branches. It did. It was totally effective. So if you're just going for that and you don't care about the skin on your face, then, maybe it's okay. But I had a sunburn. Like, I could smell burnt hair on my face and on my chest, but that is too much information. Like, I was almost really badly injured. Only by God's grace was I not. And so what I realized that day is gasoline is really, really dangerous. It's really dangerous. And so because it needs to be treated that way. And not just casually poured around and just throwing fire on it willy-nilly. Absolutely not. Because of what it is, it needs to be treated for what it is. And I think when alcohol is a part of your culture and a part of your family and every celebration, you become very casual with something that's very volatile, and I think that's the problem. And the more casual we are with dangerous things, the more we get burned by them. So for me and my family, as long as I have control of them, once my children are adults, they're going to have to make their own decisions. But for me and my family, we do not drink. It's not in our house. If others are drinking around us, we don't condemn them. We don't go home and after we've seen you buying beer at H-E-B and say, I can't believe them. That devil drink, can you believe that? We don't do that. We understand the reality of the situation, but for us, we just don't do it. Because the one way I know for sure I can prevent drunkenness in me and my household is not to bring that substance into my house. And so it's not that I would condemn anyone that does. I would just say, approach it prayerfully, approach it cautiously and not casually, because the more casual you are with it, the more likely you are for it to do serious damage to you and your family. And it's done serious damage to Aaron's family. 2 of his sons are dead because of it. And we could probably take a poll in the room and ask who in here has had a death in their family or near their family because of alcohol, and a lot of hands would probably go up, because it is not a substance to just treat lightly. So it doesn't mean you have to completely abstain. It means you need to consider it for what it is and treat it that way. But in the holy place, it's forbidden. In the tabernacle, it's absolutely forbidden. So for Aaron and the priests, if they were to imbibe it all, and interestingly, there are some drink offerings that involve wine, so sometimes it's even poured out in the room, but it is not to be drank at all. Don't even think about it. If you do, you'll die. This is not something to be taken lightly, and it does not belong in the holy place. So this is actually going to be a great lead-in to the rest of the message, because what we're going to see is distinctions are beginning to be made from this event on. And when we go from chapter 10 to chapter 11, the commandments of Leviticus are going to change in type. So we've been talking about sacrifices and how they are to be done by the people. We talked about sacrifices and how they're to be done by the priests. We've seen the sacrifice offered correctly and incorrectly. And now we're seeing the ramifications, like the ripple effect of that bad offering. Well, from here on out, we're going to go from that to very specific commands about what to do with certain things. And the transition is actually almost perfectly written through this story. The transition from here's what happens in the holy place and everyone involved with it, to here's what happens when you go home in the common areas with common things. And so that is a transition that's happening, but the attention, the microscope is being placed on not necessarily what should we do and how should we do it mechanically, but should we do and why should we do it? And I think many times in Christianity we get so caught up in what should we do and how should we do it mechanically that we miss the why of what we're doing. You think about a Sunday morning worship service. There's a lot that goes into this, and many of you know that, but maybe you don't. I mean, it's not just like this praise team came up today and is like, hey, what do y'all want to sing? Like, I like this one, this one, this one. And then they just like, well, we'll see how that goes. You know? And no, there was a lot of preparation, thought and prayer and practice that went into bringing the songs to us this morning. For me, I mean, sometimes you may not believe it, but there's a lot of thought and prayer and preparation that goes into a message. I don't obsess about a lot of things, but week by week, I obsess over what does this passage say then? What does it say now? How does it point to Christ? And what does that mean for me? Like, I'm thinking through that all week, every week. There's a lot that goes into it. And so we think about mechanically all that happens. And we can get hyper obsessed over the mechanics of it. You think about it as a church member, you come here week by week, it's on your schedule, it's an appointment that you keep, you meet with people, you listen, you sing, and then you go home and you just go about your day because you've checked off that mechanical box, maybe without thinking about, well, why did I do that? What was going on there? What was the purpose? And so because of our temptation to only think mechanically about things, here our attention is drawn to the why of the matter. So before we get into clean and unclean animals, and by the time we get to 15, we get to bodily fluids. I know you're going to want to be here for that one. Before we get into that and the mechanics of it, we have to first have a microscope placed on the why of it. And so we made it to verse 10. We read 8 and 9. That's all we made it so far, but we're okay. Verse 10. You must distinguish between the holy and the common, the clean and the unclean. This is the message for today, but let's keep reading. And teach the Israelites all the statutes that the Lord has given them through Moses. So Moses spoke to Aaron and his remaining sons, Eleazar and Ithamar. Take the grain offering that is left over from the fire offerings to the Lord and eat it, prepared without yeast beside the altar, because it is especially holy. You must eat it in a holy place because it is your portion, and your sons from the fire offerings to the Lord. For this is what I was commanded. But you and your sons and daughters may eat the breast of the presentation offering and the thigh of the contribution in any ceremonially clean place, because these portions have been assigned to you and your children from the Israelites' fellowship sacrifices. They are to bring the thigh of the contribution and the breast of the presentation offering, together with the offerings of the fat portions made by fire, to present as a presentation offering before the Lord. It will belong permanently to you and your children, as the Lord commanded. And then Moses inquired carefully about the male goat of the sin offering, but it had already been burned up. He was angry with Eleazar and Ithamar, Aaron's surviving sons, and asked, why didn't you eat the sin offering in the sanctuary area? For it is especially holy, and he's assigned it to you to take away the guilt of the community and make atonement for them before the Lord. Since its blood was not brought inside the sanctuary, you should have eaten it in the sanctuary area as I commanded. So pause for a second, just so we know what's happening. Moses is reminding them what to do with the different parts of the sacrifices and where they can and cannot be eaten. So eat this one in the holy place because it's especially holy. This one you can take out and eat in a common area with your family because it's for you and your family, but keep it holy. And then he realizes as he goes down the list of the sacrifices and where they should be eaten, he realizes there's one that should be eaten that is not there. It's been burned up. It's the goat from the sin offering. It was burned up, but it should have been eaten by the priest. And Moses is worried because they have not followed God's commands. And we've just seen what happens when you don't follow the commands of God. So Moses is extremely worried that they've messed up. We burned up something that should have been eaten. You should have eaten it. Why didn't you eat it? It says he's extremely angry with Eleazar and Ithamar for not following the Lord's command. So verse 19 says, Aaron replied to Moses, see today, they presented their sin offering and burnt offerings before the Lord. Since these things have happened to me, if I had eaten the sin offering today, would it have been acceptable in the Lord's sight? And when Moses heard this, it was acceptable to him. So here's what Aaron says, because it's not very plain just as we read that. Here's what Aaron says. He says, my sons were just killed for sinning in the tabernacle after the sin offering had already been presented. So if we'd eaten the rest of that sin offering and we hadn't presented another sin offering, then we would have been condemned. Because what had been cleansed had been dirtied again by the sin of Nadab and Abihu. So now this sin offering is negated and has to be represented. So we burned it up. We didn't want to risk ourselves coming before God unclean to a clean place. And Moses says, hey, that's pretty smart. I get it now. You were really paying attention in class. You get 100. You get an A. You understand that the things of God that are holy should be kept holy. The things of God are kept separate for His purpose and shouldn't be mixed with common things. And the common things we see should be designated as clean or unclean. And that comes to the point of this whole thing. Verse 10. Verse 10. If you're wondering, like, where are we headed? What's this all about? As we look back and as we look forward, verse 10:10 kind of ties it all together. To the people of God, he says, you must distinguish between the holy and the common, and the clean and the unclean. These are not synonymous. Holy and common is not synonymous with clean and unclean. So what we have is a great category and then a minor category. So first, you must distinguish between what is holy and what is common. So for the Israelites, this was pretty easy because God had told them exactly what was holy. The tabernacle is holy. The priests are holy. The sacrifices are holy. The different levels within the tabernacle are holy and especially holy, and then a place that is essentially and only holy, only one can go in. Right? So holiness has been very specifically defined to them. So the things within the tabernacle, the operations of the priests in the tabernacle, the sacrifices the people bring to the tabernacle, these are holy. And if a holy thing touches someone, then it becomes holy. And we saw earlier that holy means consecrated, set apart only for God. Holy things cannot be used for common things. So if you use a holy thing for something that's common, you are profaning God. So the first category, separation, holy and common. So what are common things then? Well, everything else. Everything else is common. What do you wear? Oh, where do you work? How does all of that tie together? Oh, what do you eat? How do you relate to your family? What's your marriage look like? What's your relationship? All common things here. Holy are the things set apart to God. The acts of worship, these are holy to God. Holy, not common. So holy can only be used for God. If it is used for common things, it is profaning God. Common is just for your use. It's for every man, every woman's use. Common. Okay, so that's the first designation. Does that make sense? Holy and common. Second designation is within the things that are common. Did y'all hear water? Okay, just make sure it wasn't just me. I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's fine. It's not common, though. I know the source of it for sure. Where it's going, not as sure. But that's okay. Let's try to focus. Maybe you're doing fine. I'm the one who's going to try to focus here. Stopped. Thank God. Okay. The common, among the common, then we divide again. Clean and unclean. So in the worship of God, these things are holy only for worship, and then everything else is common. And then in the common things, we have another division, clean and unclean. So just because it's clean does not make it holy. Right? So just because it's clean does not make it holy. It's common and clean. But everything holy must be clean. All right, so let's give an example, good Old Testament example, Noah's Ark. Remember Noah's Ark? So then these introductions of these categories are not new. They go all the way back, even before Abraham and all Isaac and Jacob. So it's not new. These are not just given to Moses. These were widely held by the people of God. Ever since people knew God, they knew of this. So Noah's Ark, he says, hey, how many animals did he bring on the ark? Anybody remember? How'd the animals come? They came 2 by 2, right? Well, no, they didn't. The clean animals came 2 by 2. But the unclean animals came 2 by 2. But how many of the clean animals came? 7. So the songs are all wrong. We got to go back and rewrite them and correct them. And you're going to have to re-rhyme. 7 is a lot harder to rhyme than 2, though. I think that's what happened. I think that's the issue. But why 7? Because some of them would have been involved in sacrifices. Many of them would have been involved in being eaten. But the unclean animals would not have been eaten. So all you needed from the unclean were a male and female of each kind. But among the clean, you needed more so that the people in the ark could eat. And so the people of the ark could offer sacrifice to God. So to be holy, it has to be clean. But not every clean thing is holy. Does that make sense? But no unclean thing can be holy. So we have holy and common. And then among the common, we have clean and unclean. And we can see it very clearly in the animals on Noah's Ark. Thank you, God, for such a clear illustration. Some animals were unclean, not able to be eaten. Some animals are clean and able to be eaten. And that's actually the next chapter, chapter 11. So come back if you're like on the edge of your seat and you're like, I want to know. Just wait. We're going there. It's going to be amazing. It's going to change your life, I promise you. So in Israel then, we have category, holy, common. In the common category, we have clean, unclean. And you say, well, how does that apply? Well, before I get to how that applies, I want to make something else very clear. Unclean does not mean sinful. Unclean does not mean sinful. Just an example would be like, if you are around a dead body, you're unclean for a period of time. Now, is it sinful to be around a dead body? No. We need some folks who will be around dead bodies. Like, we need people who that is their job to deal with that. And so it's not sinful. So then cleanliness and uncleanliness is not sinful, not sinful. Sin and not sin is actually its own category. It has to do with your heart and your behavior. It has to do with your attitudes and your actions. Sin is its own thing. So we're not talking about sinful, not sinful. We're talking about holy, common, clean, and unclean. These are the categories given to Israel so that they could regulate their life, so that they knew how to act wisely. So the problem for us is inputting this into our lives because we no longer live in these categories. We don't. So among us, who's holy? Among us, who is clean? Well, the answer is none except for those who are made holy. The answer is none except for those who are made clean. You see, in this room, all we have are common and unclean. You don't believe me, I'll point it to you in the text. You're all, well, as far as I know, a bunch of Gentiles. Now, if you're not, wow, that's awesome. Good for you. You're still unclean because you're a sinner. But before we get to the sin aspect of it, we're all common and unclean, but separated from the family of God eternally. So then already these categories don't apply. You look at Romans 1, those who did not have the law did not have the law counted against them. Right? So we do not fit. These categories are not imported to us, and yet there's a lot we can learn from them because the things that are holy are just common things that are made holy. Aren't they? The things that are holy are just common things. You got curtains and rods, and you've got these corridors that are set off by these curtains, and that becomes the tabernacle. But really, if you look at it, it's just a bunch of curtains. So what makes curtains the tabernacle? They've been set apart as holy. So a common thing becomes holy. And then you think about the sacrifices. You go out to grab a sacrifice and you're supposed to get the best one. So you grab this lamb or this bull or this stuff and you say, okay, this one's holy. But 5 seconds ago, what was it? It was common. So it's been made holy. The common can be made holy. So then now we're already, you're coming with me hopefully to the point. But then we look at clean and unclean, and here's the difference. Nothing unclean can be made clean in this system. Well, that's not true. That's not true. An animal that's unclean can't be made clean, but a person that's unclean can. In fact, that's the whole point of it. That's the whole point of it. That if I become unclean through whatever means, the point of it is not that I would remain unclean, but that is unclean would be made clean. So now get the process. If I begin in a state of common and unclean, like I'm at the lowest point in the totem pole, what ought to be my goal for my life? Like, what is the highest, best thing in Israel? It is the offering before God that He receives as a pleasing aroma before His presence. And so Israel is focused on, let us offer offerings before God as a pleasing aroma. So how can that be? It must be something that's clean, that's made holy, that's brought before God in a holy way that He's designated. A sacrifice. Well, those sacrifices never added up eternally. They could only add up temporarily. So God decided to give us a way to come to Him. And rather than demanding a bottom-up approach to God, He's given us a top-down so that now the holy left heaven and became common, but did not give up holiness. So He became holy and common at the same time. God and man in the same person. He lived perfectly, never defiling Himself, but being around many who were defiled. You think about it, how many unclean people Jesus was around. So now we have the holy who comes to the common, and the common and clean goes out to the unclean. And when the one who left heaven comes down to the common and unclean, guess what happens to the unclean? They become clean. And guess what happens to those who now have been made clean in Christ? Guess what happens to them? They who were just common and unclean, now they're common and clean, but now they've met the Savior. They are set aside as holy. So what could not be accomplished from the bottom up has been accomplished from the top down. You see, you could have never made yourself holy. You couldn't. It wouldn't have mattered how many sacrifices you offered. It wouldn't matter how many bulls or goats or rams or sheep or doves you brought. It wouldn't matter how many cakes you baked. You would have always needed to do another. The bottom-up approach never could have worked, so God made a top-down way for the thing that was as far away as possible. The common and unclean could be made clean and holy before God. So all of us begin unclean and common. We're sinners. And the sin defiles us. We talked about that. Sin places a demand on us, a blood demand on each one of us to take away sin. We're common, we're unclean, and we can't meet that demand on our own, but the demand has been met for us. Jesus has not just come down from heaven and lived perfectly so you could be holy, but He has paid the penalty of unholiness. He's paid the penalty for uncleanliness. And so now we who are unclean can be made clean. We who experience the cleanliness of Jesus, our eyes are opened by that. Our leprosy is taken away. Our lame legs are given energy to walk again. The unclean has been made clean. And now what do we do with this that we've been given? My eyes have been opened. Why? So I can see Christ and His holiness, and through that be made holy. My legs have been given strength so I can run to Jesus instead of away from Him. My unclean skin has been made whole now so now I can be the light of the world, not cowering in darkness, separated because of uncleanliness, but now boldly standing and proclaiming the truth of God. The things unclean is made clean so that it can be made holy before God. And this is who we are to be. Too many times we settle for being common and unclean, close to the holy. But Jesus' will for you is not that you would just be near him. Jesus' will for us is that we would be made into his likeness. And we cherish the nearness of Jesus. It's one of the most encouraging words in the Bible when Jesus says, I'll be with you always, even until the end of the age. It's one of the most encouraging things in the whole Bible. And yet, his will for you is not just that he would be close to you. His will for you is that you would become like him. God's will for Israel was not just that they would observe all the observances, checking off every mechanical box. His will for them was, as they drew near to the holy, that it would make them holy, and that's his will for you. So why are you here? Why have a bunch of common, unclean folk gather in a place like this? Well, I'm here because I'm no longer common and unclean. And I didn't deserve what has happened to me, but I've been transformed by the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. I've been transformed by the gift of the Holy Spirit that indwells me, and I am being transformed into the image of Christ. And it's something that is as far away from God as possible, has been made holy, not by my work from the bottom up, but by the work of Jesus. The holy has come to the common, and he's touched the unclean, and he's made me. He is making me like himself. And if you believe, that's true for you. So why be content to live in the same neighborhood as Jesus? Why be content? I know him. He's on my contact list. I can't remember his number because I can't remember any of your numbers. But I know Jesus. I have a relationship with him. I text him when I need him and he shows up. He's my friend on Facebook. I know what he's doing in the world. Why are you content to live near him when his will for you is for you to become like him? So for us who have believed, the calling is that through Jesus we would leave behind the unclean. Through Jesus, we would not be content to remain in the category of the common, but that we would recognize the power of Christ in his work in us, that he has made us holy and is making us holy as we pursue him. And if you've not believed, I just want to be very clear. If you've not believed, you are not his. You are unclean, separated from God. You cannot come into the holy place. You would defile it were you to come in. You can't come there. And here's the thing. I can't make it better for you. And you can't make it better for you. Only Jesus can make it better for you. The good news is, he will. He will. Anyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. It doesn't matter how unclean you are. It doesn't matter how far away you are. It doesn't matter how common you see yourself as. There's nothing that his death, burial, and resurrection cannot overcome. If you've not believed, you can, and you'll be made holy. I have a friend named Troy who's serving multiple life sentences for a crime that he committed. And I spent hours with Troy pleading with him to know Jesus. And Troy's response to me over and over again was that he could not, because there's no way he could be forgiven for what he had done. And maybe your offense is not nearly as extreme as his. Well, obviously it's not, because you're here. But many of you believe the same thing about yourself, about what you've done. You think, I have gone too far. I've done too much. I'm too dirty. I'm too unclean. I'm too common. God can't use me. God doesn't want me. And I want to tell you that's a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie to you. It's a lie to Troy. He doesn't save us because we're so good. He saves us to demonstrate his power. That he can save you no matter how unclean you are, how common you are. He can make you holy. That's what he wants for you. So in saying you think you've done too much, you think you're insulting yourself, but you're really insulting the power of Christ. And I just want you to stop. Please stop. He can take any unclean thing and make it clean. He can take any common thing and make it holy, and that includes you. So what is the invitation? The invitation is to trust Jesus if you haven't and be saved. The invitation to the believer is to walk toward Christ. Walk into the holy. Be made into the image of Jesus. This is my prayer for me and you. So I'm going to be standing here. And if you're like, I want to be baptized, I saw that, I want it. Let's go. Come talk to me. If there's something we need to pray for you about, come talk to me. I'd love to pray for you, with you. But let's not be content to be common near the holy. Let's press on. Let's press on. Let's pursue the plan that God has for us. Having made us holy, He is making us holy. Let's lean in to that. Let that become the purpose of our lives. Let's pray. God, I thank you for your word. I thank you for